looming showdown over President Trump's Supreme Court nominee. Republicans need at least 8 Democrats to vote in favor of Judge Neil Gorsuch next week to overcome a filibuster, but most Democrats we've heard from, they're openly opposing the nomination. This means that Senate Republicans might invoke what is called the nuclear option. The controversial move would allow Judge Gorsuch to be confirmed with a simple majority vote without any Democratic support. Joining me now is Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah. He serves on the Judiciary Committee. Senator Lee, thank you so much for being with us. I know this is actually a subject you've talked about, written about for a long time. Would you support changing the Senate rules to allow for the nuclear option?
Look, we're going to get Judge Gorsuch confirmed. This is a good judge. This is a judge who interprets the law based on what it says rather than what he might wish it might say. And we intend to get him confirmed. We will get him confirmed one way or another.
One way or another means yes on the nuclear option if you have to go that way.
It means we're going to get him confirmed.
Nuclear.
It means we're going to get him confirmed.
No matter what it takes.
Yeah, look, there are a number of routes this thing could take. I believe that he will be confirmed at the end of this. I'm not sure exactly what procedural route, but he's going to be confirmed. And when we talk about the nuclear option, we have to remember the Democrats went nuclear on the executive calendar. They nuked the executive calendar in November of 2013. As they did that, they purported to carve out this exception for Supreme Court nominees. But all of the rationale that they used at the time applied with equal force to everyone, whether they're serving in the executive branch of government or in the judicial branch of government. They nuked the entire thing. And so for them now to say that, well, it shouldn't have extended to that is a little disingenuous. 3.5 years later, to have regrets about the fact that they nuked the executive calendar is not a reason not to confirm Judge Gorsuch.
And look, I've talked to Democratic senators who flat out tell me they do regret that they did it at all. They regret that they made that move because it didn't allow them to filibuster some cabinet appointees. But the fact is, you're absolutely right. They did it first. The question now is, are you willing to go there? It sounds like yes. I'm just curious why you're not willing to say that you would support the nuclear option.
Yeah, just to be clear, I have an overall policy of not signaling in advance of a particular procedural move in the Senate exactly what course I'm going to take, in part because it relies on facts not yet in evidence. It relies on things that we don't yet know and whether or not we have to go there. But again, I want to get back to this other point that I was making before, which is that the Democrats, in fact, nuked the entire executive calendar. That's what they did in November of 2013. Whether they acknowledge that or not is a different question. I don't see this as, are we willing to take the next step? There is no next step. This is the step they created in November of 2013.
Well, look, I mean, they say that it did not apply to Supreme Court justices. They made that point at the time on the floor. But both you and I know we're talking about, this is not like it's in the Constitution. You're a constitutionalist. I mean, it's not like the Senate rules are written in the Constitution. You can make them up as you go along. It's precedent. The precedent is, at least right now, that, Supreme Court justices, you can filibuster them right now, but you say you want to go nuclear.
I push back on that. I push back on that. I want to be very clear. When they did this back then, sure, they might have said we're not necessarily intending this to extend to other circumstances, but in every situation where we've been confirming someone, whether it's to an executive branch position, to an independent board or commission, to a federal district judge vacancy, a federal circuit court vacancy, any of those things, ever since November of 2013, the precedent has been established that the executive calendar having been nuked, it takes only 51 votes to close debate on a nominee. That is based on the rationale that they used at the time, which extends to the whole of the executive calendar.
But you would be the first ones to do it. And again, I'm not arguing you shouldn't. I mean, what goes around comes around in politics. I mean, the Democrats may have made this bet in 2013. I just still don't understand why you won't admit that you're going to do something that hasn't been done before for Supreme Court justices.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, one of the reasons why I'm not talking about exactly what we're going to do, we don't know how many votes we will have on cloture. And so there may be no reason to have this debate of whether this was something that's already been done or whether this was being done for the first time. And like I say, I have a personal policy of not signaling in most circumstances what procedural steps I might take in the Senate before we know whether it's going to be necessary anyway. But since you're pushing back, I have to point out it's not really taking a next step. This is the step they took in November of 2013. Every single argument they made in support of their decision to nuke the executive calendar extends to the entirety of the executive calendar and not just to the non-Supreme Court nominees.
All right. Again, Democrats would disagree with that, but I think we've run the course on this subject. Oh, I think we've run the course. Let me ask you. Can I ask you one question about health care? I don't want to lose you on health care. I don't want to lose you on health care.
Democrats would respond differently, but you asked them what they said just a few weeks before the November election this last year. They were already signaling that they were going to apply this in the context of Supreme Court nominees. So the fact that Democrats may say otherwise is contradictory to their own arguments and to their own statements just before this election.
I understand it, and they, of course, the two words that they might say is Merrick Garland. So when you're talking about rules here, you're talking about precedent. You know, again, it's just you guys have the power right now. You can do this. All I was trying to get to was. I have no idea.
What does Merrick Garland have to do?
I think what Democrats would say. I think what Democrats would say. I think what Democrats would say, you know, for Republicans who say you shouldn't filibuster a Supreme Court nominee, Democrats would respond and say, well, you shouldn't block a Supreme Court nominee from even having hearings on Capitol Hill.
Fine.
All I was saying was the political environment that has been set up over the last 2 years because of Republicans and Democrats.
Gotcha. But again, the same arguments they used to go nuclear in November 2013 and the same arguments that they were making just weeks in advance of the November 2016 election lead to exactly the outcome that they're now decrying, that they're now calling out against. And I think it's disingenuous.
I only have time for a yes-no question.